Hello and welcome back to Watercolor Theory. Today I'll be going over a plein air painting of the Firehouse Art Gallery in Longmont. This was one of the first ones I've done and have the painting behind me. This is after I've added gouache. I didn't do gouache out in the field, as I call it. I did the gouache back at the house. And in this, I found that there was a bit of I had a bit of a fiasco with the gouache. I don't know that I'll be doing that out there, but I've got pictures of that. Um, and so, what drew me to this was the one. It's the art gallery. It's an old piece of architecture. It's not the fanciest, but it's not the most bland. The way the light was hitting it, I really enjoyed the way it was kissing parts of the crown molding and edges around the window for window frames and signs on the building, and then also really how it just hit the art gallery sign. On the plein air piece, I just put the word art rather than trying to write out art and gallery. It's a little complex, and I'll show pictures of subsequent paintings that I've done. I did a little vignette of the art gallery sign, and I did a little vignette of the firehouse sign on the top. So it's got the whole thing and then two of the key elements of the painting. So it makes, I think it's an 11 by 14 and then two 8 by 10s. And that I don't have on display, but I'll put it up. The one over here is a second one that I had done some sizing with, but it was in studio, not on location. Um, so I did it. I've done four altogether paintings from this start that I've had. Um, so I also have a little bit of footage that I'm showing in between about again what drew me to it and the gouache incident and just different things like that. Uh,
All right, so I'm just getting set up to paint the old Longmont Fire Department, which is now an art gallery. Um, thing that drew me to this, we've got some dramatic lighting, good contrast there. The lights coming down, kissing the window sills a little bit, but it really hits where it says art gallery. Uh, the light will obviously be changing as I'm drawing and painting this, but I'm taking photos and videos along the way. Here's my kit really quick. Go wide on this. So I've shown the bike before, and ending up not using the bike today. There wasn't anything to tie it to, and I do have a stand, but I didn't feel like using that, so I broke out the easel, and then I use the box on the back of the bike that serves as my pushad box when I'm using the bike. I'm using it as kind of a little table. Had a little mishap. My gouaches were too wet, and a couple of the colors spilled all over the place. So I've got a little bit of a mess there, and I'm also, questioning if I'm going to be using gouache out in the field anyway. It might be something where I paint watercolor in the field, and then, maybe I use it to note some notes, like color notes. So again, here's the fire station.
So this scene, as it was, didn't require a lot of work. It has a little bit of perspective, which I didn't do very well, and it has the depth that it does lack is because I'm maybe painting the trees too dark, so they're kind of coming forward, or there's not any. It really isn't any layering. I mean, it's sky, trees, but those trees are right next to the building and then the building itself. So, um, but it is also, I'm doing it rather than taking on something like a Victorian home that has a lot of angles, which I had done before this at the Callahan house. Um, so it was pretty straightforward doing that.
All right, so I have most of the initial drawing done. My perspective is way off, and I don't care. My some of my lines don't line up correctly. This line should be in line with that line. I had started to make a correction and kind of popped around here and there, and I only brought one sheet of paper, and it's kind of good. It's I'll paint it and I'll see what other people think. It's about capturing color. It's about just getting out of the studio. So I'm not too worried about that. This isn't intended for gallery. It's intended to be of the gallery. So I'm about ready to start laying down paint. I think that there is a downtown event going on. There are lots of people around, and some signs saying no parking. So it could be due to the construction, but I think it's summertime in Colorado, and people are really into outdoors, either hiking and biking and camping, or just doing events in downtown areas like this. So I'm going to put in the trees, the sidewalk, and then start laying down some paint. My thought process on Plein Air is doing very quick watercolor and getting as close to the accurate value as possible, and then utilizing either in the field or back home, utilizing the gouache at that point in time. After the gouache, I won't call it a fiasco, but it was a bit of a mess this morning. I'm questioning if I'm going to pack it with me, but it was really my fault. I over wet it and didn't give it time to dry, and that's why I put that Ziploc bag in there to kind of seal it off. So it isn't a total loss, but it's not ideal. So lights changed a little bit with it's not quite as warm. It's diffused right now behind the clouds, so we don't have any highlights where it says art gallery or anything like that. I am very fortunate. Well, many of the cars are electric where I live, but then a noisy car just pulled up behind me. So back to getting this ready to paint.
This point in my plein air journey, I was thinking of plein air as just a note taking. I mean, and literally meaning like a, a dab of color as a note. That's, instead of saying it was a bluish green, I paint the bluish green color notes. And so I looked at it as visual note taking, but now I'm kind of looking at it as, what can I accomplish in 90 minutes for a quick paint, or 2 hours for a quick draw? Or what can I do in 3 hours? And then, how much can I do well in the field, and then finish the last 40% of it in studio there. I was looking at some rules for another plein air event, and it said 60% in the field, 40% in studio. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a possibility as well. I would rather get 80% of it done, and then maybe a couple things that need a real steady hand, like one, your signature, two, maybe if you're putting in some dark fine line branches, or whatever it is that you may feel the need to do. But so I've kind of shifted my focus, but that's also a summertime thing, or a warm weather outlook on it. I mean, in 2 months it will be November in Colorado, but it could still be 70 degrees outside, and a beautiful day to go paint, and still some leaves on trees, a lot of changing colors. So I can probably paint, I mean, out of 52 weekends a year, I can probably paint 40 of them. And some of those, are unpaintable in spring due to due to rain or wind or whatever. I mean, a breeze is one thing, a sprinkle is another, but we can get some pretty heavy rain and pretty brutal winds. So um, that's the way I've kind of shifted my purpose with plein air. But I know in around the holidays there will be some times where it's like, okay, what do I want to do as a studio painting? The studio painting that I had, oh, that you can barely see it. It's this little Volkswagen, little bug at sunset. That was kind of one of my studio painting ideas, and I've got a couple more that are shelved right now, and about five or well, seven total paintings, but a couple of them aren't really intended to be gallery pieces or anything like that. So, but that's kind of how I'm looking at, that studio time is when I can't, like it's like when you were a kid, you did puzzles and played checkers when it was raining, and then you went outside and you played. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at plein air.
All right, the lighting and the scenery have changed a good deal, especially with all the vehicles in place. Um, I'm not quite 80% there, but I'm getting there. Again, this building, if you are an architect, would, this part of it makes sense, but then you get down here and that no longer makes sense. But I'm not sure that anybody is going to notice, but an architect, but a lot of people who tune into my channel might be thinking of watercolor because they were an architect. So if it drives you crazy, I apologize. So if we look at the building, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but there's this decorative element like crown molding above the doorway, and the part that's facing, well, north, but the flat part is bluish, but the beveled part has a little bit of the slightest orangish tinge, which you're not going to see in the picture. The awning, I haven't obviously put in the black stripes yet, and I won't go that thin. I'll go with a wider thing. It's not about, it's reproducing the place, not necessarily anything about accuracy. Speaking of accuracy, I need to go home and make myself do some perspective drawings. But so far it's been fun. Sun's starting to come out. It was supposed to be more overcast today, but I'm liking the way things are looking. Probably going to put in another layer of maybe a little bit more pinkish on this side, and then a little bit more orangish over here, and then bump this up darker again, and then maybe bring the whole wash down, because I don't want this to be the focal point. I really want to push this as if it's being lit. I'll probably have to put some reflective light in here. So that's kind of the plan. I mean, it'd probably be a few hours worth of work for something that more than likely will never see the light of day other than YouTube. So on to the next phase.
So I'll probably talk about this in every episode of either the painting process or the plein air painting process. And it's just the escape of it all. I mean, all the paintings I've done are early in the morning. I'll want to do some evening ones eventually, but not nocturnes, but the golden hour at night. But the thing is in most cases, both ways, there aren't a lot of people out, so you're alone, and you can just escape and have that meditative practice, getting into that flow state and just blocking out the rest of the world and just being in. It's almost like being in hyperbaric chamber or something, like where the whole world is just tuned out. So that was a great experience I had, and only one person had anything to say, and it was like, oh, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed this. And it's usually what, like, I think a lot of people drive by and they see, oh, there's some guy painting, and then, oh, who does he think he is, Bob Ross? they maybe haven't had a lot of exposure and realize that there are people all over painting outdoors. Most of them aren't really in, downtown Longmont, so that might be part of it. Oh, and I put in my notes, trying to stay on task a little better. I put in my notes about that when you're in that flow state, and that high that you feel, that's a dopamine rush, and it's the same dopamine you feel when you go and you buy a new art supply, or whatever your Amazon order comes and you get a new haul of equipment. But really, if you can get more addicted to the experience and less addicted to the shopping. I was going through my paints the other day, and it was just watercolor that I was going through, and I'm like, I must have 100 tubes of paint. I've probably got 30 tubes of gouache and 30 tubes of acrylics, and um, realistically, I know you have to experiment a little bit, but realize that most of your paintings don't need another tube of paint. They just need you deliberately focusing on that painting and getting into that flow state. And so it does your pocketbook a favor, and it does you a favor. So I just thought about that. I think a lot about how we are driven by the need for dopamine, and how it's a byproduct of different kinds of addictions. And so really redirecting that dopamine hit to be in conjunction with a healthy habit, rather than, I mean, like I said, I've got so many tubes of paint that I'm never going to use. So that's the therapy part for today. Um,
So I think that's going to be a wrap for today. So I haven't been out here for very long, maybe an hour. And I'm not too ashamed. I'm not too ecstatic. I'm just, whatever. But I can bring out a lot of that. I do enjoy, I like the shadows. I like this, the ambiguity of it, I guess. The windows, multiple colors, got blues, purples, greens reflecting in there. Got enough of this green laid down to really bring out the art sign. You've got shapes kind of directing you there. So I think that this overall, as far as a composition goes, I'm very happy with this. And that's something that I'm striving for, is to get better at composition and getting better at a focal point. And I came in and I decided that was my focal point, not the whole scene. And sometimes having the whole scene, having the building, it tells its own story. So there's nothing wrong with that. But getting better at storytelling by being able to speak different languages maybe is a way to look at it. So I'm pretty happy. Here's where we're at with the lighting now. Zoom in as much as I can. So I've got not quite as much contrast as far as values go, but because the color is cool against warm, you've got good contrast that way. So I'm again pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to go back home and finish it out in gouache.
so I think of plein air painting, especially if you can keep something, like if you don't sell your painting, it's a visual record more so than a photograph ever could be, because you're going to step into that moment. Now I know that there are some photos that you'll do that with anyway, but the greatest, like some, like if I re-listen to a podcast, a lot of times I can remember where I was the first time I listened to it. And when I lived in Mexico, I'd walk to the gym and go, and then I'd walk back and just look down at my feet. I've got flip flops and tan lines, and I remember. And there's songs that come on and that bring me back to that. And same with my wife. There's just a few songs that those bring you back to that place. And plein air is the same way, where you drive by something and you now have a relationship with it. And I've said that about sketching and drawing as well, that if you're tracing, you're cheating yourself of the relationship, of the courtship, of learning about your subject. And plein air is the same way. You're doing your drawing and you're learning about your subject. And now you have a relationship with that no photograph could ever give you. And so if you're painting and say it's at a festival of some kind, or there's some cooking going on because you're in a city area and you smell, the carnitas are being cooked and the peppers and the onions, and, the town's coming alive and getting ready for the day. And you'll always have that moment, and that painting will bring that back for you. So if you do end up selling those paintings, at least take a picture of the painting and don't say to yourself, oh, I have a photograph of that. Save that piece and, and the visual memory of it. And maybe even write notes on the back of the painting for others. The air was filled with the smell of cooking uh, and the sound of mariachi, or depending on where you are. I didn't have any of those smells on this day, or sounds. The sound was I commented once about an electric car and then a slightly noisy car. So another thing about looking at plein air as a finished and sellable piece versus only visual journaling is, if you focus, there's a joke I've heard British people say. I went out there was a day I went out and it wasn't raining. You all remember it because it's so rare for it to not be raining in England. The same goes for your painting might capture a moment. You do a painting of say a building, or a farm scene, which would more than likely either just have cows or it might have a building in it as well. But if you're capturing someone else's memory, like somebody else saw what you're seeing, what you're portraying, that emotional connection, now they have that emotion, like you have the emotional connection for the input into the painting, and this other person has that memory in their mind, and it's like wow, I remember this day, or I've seen this place lit up like that. And so you're evoking an emotional response in somebody, and that is a doorway in. Oh, tell me more about that. Really? Do you live around here? Oh, who lives here? Or you can engage them in a conversation, and they might say, you know what, I like this so much. How much do you want for it? And it might be something where you say, yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't for sale, but it is a foot in, it's a leg in the door, or whatever. So you might find somebody that moment in time resonates with, and that's the ultimate win. The sale part could be icing, or it could be awkward, but the true thing is having somebody who is experiencing your art as an experience more than just the visual. So, and I realize that's very hard to see yourself doing, but I've been to galleries and have seen people just oohing and awing over pictures, or excuse me, paintings that I look at and I say, that isn't, very accurate. The color isn't good, whatever. I don't tell the buyer that or anything, but I'm just looking at it, and for me, it doesn't do anything, and it's not technically very good either. But to the person who's observing it, it's perfect to them, which was the context of my previous video, the perfection. So yeah, the last thing in this is, it's not just about capturing what's in front of you. It's about the experience you're going to have, a shared experience, the memory, and then also it's now something in your toolbox that may influence a future painting. And then you're going to think about the time you were painting that firehouse or whatever it is. Uh, I haven't put out the video yet, but there's a church in Lyons. Um, I had it at my back when I did my first bicycle based plein air painting. And it was painting this brown stone building. Lyons is there's a quarry in Lyons, and so all of that stone was quarried from there. But anyway, I stood at that building and painted that church, and I can always now visualize that church. And before I had gone to do that plein air painting, I did have um, at the house, I had already photographed the building and done a lot of sketches of it, and then made some modifications to make it more to fit what people saw. But that's something that's with me more so, I think, than any other painting that I've done yet. So um, I guess that's the gift you're giving. You're giving somebody else a journey into their own mind of, gosh, that's exactly how I picture it, or that's how I remember it. I used to go there as a kid, or I grew up on this farm, and wow, this is amazing. It brings me back to my childhood. Whatever it is, you got to kind of get to a point. I mean, and it does sound egotistical, but it's kind of part of the job. It's capturing the moment that that a photographer could catch, but you can see it no matter what the light is. Learning to see beyond what is in front of you. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. So please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, lovely to see you again, my friend.